Hey, what's up? My name is Chris Highfill. Welcome back to 101 Questions That Church Planters Ask. And today we're going to be answering the question, who should preach while I'm gone? And this is really essential, really important question that needs to be answered in the formation of a brand new church. And so today we're talking in the context of a new church startup.
Yeah, and this is going to be a really short one. It's going to be only a minute long because you shouldn't be gone at all. Zero. Okay, you're going to preach
right.
52.
Yeah.
No. Okay. Joking aside, right?
Yeah, the expectation for a church planter is that you're going to speak a lot. And I think that's really important to understand. Like, you may be coming from a church where the lead guy only spoke 25 or 35 weekends a year. But in the beginning of a new church, in the formation or the startup of a new church, the key point lead pastor has to be able to carry the load of speaking, especially in that first 12 months.
Yeah, and I would say first 12 to 18 to maybe even 36. I mean, just as a concept, and this goes back to something that we speak about generally, that in the beginning, whether you like it or not, you are the face, the personality, the person that sets culture, all of those things. So your presence is really, really important. And Chris, what you said, I think, is what we often see is that when you are coming from some sort of established church, oftentimes, the pastor's taking the entire summer off and they might say, I do this and it's so helpful for me and you should do that. You need to grow into that. I think it's a great and healthy thing. Eventually you'll get to that. I think it's great that you aren't the main preacher. However, in the beginning, for you to be there a majority of the time, of course, yes, you need to take some vacation with your family. Be strategic about that. So all of that to say, maybe a handful, maybe 5 Sundays that you're not preaching. And even of those 5, maybe you're still there. Yeah.
I'd say 5 is the max.
So what would you say, Chris? Give some advice of who are possible people that would preach at the church. A lot of times it's probably not going to be some, established pastor that you pay a bunch of money to kind of do it. But just give some different ideas of, hey, if you were to have someone in that first 3 years, who are some different people that you could consider having at the church plant?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to be thinking about culture, and the reality is there's not a throwaway Sunday in any day. And so you could think that maybe it's Thanksgiving weekend's a throwaway Sunday, or the first Sunday of the year, or whatever. And I'm just telling you, there is not a day in your whole preaching calendar year that is wasted. So I think this is really, really important to understand. And, early on, we didn't have anybody on our team that could preach besides me. And so I know, Danny, that's part of your story is you were like 50 or 51 weeks a year. So was I. And, you kind of have to be the lead torchbearer on that. And that doesn't mean, like, you often think that you need to be like this amazing preacher. People need to hear from the key vision person. The content needs to be amazing, right? The delivery needs to be amazing. But it's really important that they hear from you. So people that you could have step in, maybe your wife is having a baby, right? Or maybe you just absolutely have to go to that funeral or whatever it may be that takes you out of town. Some things to think about. I know we're using like extreme situations here, right?
Yeah.
It's mainly as a joke. But some people to think about are denominational leaders inside your denomination. More than likely, you're connected. I want to really encourage you, if you're not connected, to get connected to a tribe or a group. You need some kind of an association of churches that you can be a part of to be able to do this. And so that's really, really key and really important. And I know in our first year or two, that's who we would bring in. We wouldn't bring in local or area pastors because, check it out, they're also busy on Sunday morning. Also, we would bring in, every once in a while, we would bring in the pastor from our sending church would come because he understood our culture and our DNA. And they were very financially behind us, very much emotionally behind us, and spiritually behind us. And so it was cool for our church to be able to experience somebody coming in from the outside that wasn't just a complete outsider. Like they knew our story, and they had been at launch team meetings, and they had been around. And so it was almost like they were an extension of our very, very, very small staff. And so that was super helpful as well.
Yeah, I think one of the key things too that's great about that, what you said, is see how they can actually serve you. So it's not like more important than sticking within some sort of sermon series, because to be honest, the congregation cares much less about a sermon series than the actual pastor does. But it's like, this leader, like this is the person that recruited me to plant a church. They know me. They've, seen me go through assessment. Have them come, because they can even, say like, wow, what God is doing here is really, really amazing. And I know your pastor, and, they're doing a good job. Yeah. So I think it's totally okay that if you have someone come, that you have them, speak to, and maybe they have a sermon that this is the one that they kind of always give as they travel around. Totally okay. Probably some of the stuff that they say on the front side or back side of their sermon is going to be more important than, sticking within the series type of thing. And like you said, leaders, sending church, those types of things are really, really huge.
Yeah. So there's a big advantage to that, because they can say things about you and add validity to the mission, to the vision. They can say things about generosity that maybe you initially feel a little awkward saying. Now, you need to be able to talk about generosity. Don't just bring in outsiders to talk about that. But they're able to say some things that add validity to the mission of the church and to you as a leader. And so you have to be thinking about, when you have a guest speaker come in, make sure they're going to be able to pour gasoline on a fire that's already burning. And so there are not throwaway Sundays. I think I cannot say that enough. Don't think. We used to think
so
that the Sunday...
Who would you put as like, here's a, just be really cautious, or don't have this person as your guest preacher. Yeah. Just don't say my name. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Don't have the guy who visits your church and says, I used to be an elder at another church, or a guy, I used to be a pastor at this church. Because what they're telling you in a very short conversation, what they're saying to you is, hey, I can do this, and I feel like I deserve this. And if you give that to them without, test them out in other places first. Don't let the Sunday morning, I'm not saying don't use those people. What I am saying is, don't let that be an experiment for the Sunday that you're out of town. Like, anytime someone speaks for the first time, you better be there, right? Like, I think it's really important to test that out, because what if they lay a bomb, or what if they say something that's just theologically out there that you're like, well, wait a second, I thought you said you were an elder at whatever church, and you're like, dude, their theology is like spaceship stuff. This is weird, where did that come from? And again, you can't afford in the early days to have a bad Sunday like that. And so I've heard some war stories about guest preachers not even showing up, and you're like, what? Like, how did you even recover in that moment? And so you want to make sure there's some credibility behind the guest speaker. And I think one thing that you can start doing in the first year is develop a pipeline early on with some key leaders, and give them teaching opportunities that aren't on Sunday morning. So, I'm not saying you have them lead a prayer meeting, but give them an opportunity on an off night to give them some leadership up front, to see how prepared they are. I think you should always be testing and trying out leaders, but see how they do in different environments. Maybe you're doing a small group leader meeting. Let them lead a part of that meeting up front, and just kind of see how it goes. A thing that we started early on was a thing called Leader Track, which was basically a book club, but I would never call it a book club, because most dudes especially aren't joining a book club, but Leader Track was 6 months, 6 books, and I gave them material to read, and I wanted to see if they would do what I asked them to do. What was I doing? I was testing them early on to see if they were good leaders or not. And some of those I noticed, hey, maybe this guy could speak. And so what we did early on was, instead of having one guest speaker, we would have 3 that got 10 minutes each. And they would kind of tag team. It was kind of a Royal Rumble WWE kind of experience, right? But it was great, and we still do that to this day because it's a great opportunity to get new people involved and to kind of test and try out some things. And if two of the three are great, then it's like, hey, that was a great Sunday, and it's just a great experience for them, and they got a chance to kind of work on them a little bit as well.
Yeah, I think that is just a brilliant way to do it. If you do internal, especially, have three of your leaders, each person has 10 minutes. You kind of do a coaching development thing. It also does set the culture for the church, like, hey, we're about developing other people. Also spreading it out doesn't make it look, oh, so is that like the associate pastor? Is that like the new person out there? The other thing that I'll say that's really helpful is that if it's weeks that you're there, that you do the introduction and the host moment. So essentially what you're doing is you're saying, I'm the lead pastor, even if you don't say that, you can say I'm the planting pastor, but really excited to have guest speaker. In other words, hey, if it totally sucks today, come back, type of thing. And if you're actually gone, one of the things that you can do is record the intro. So even if you're not the service host, but it's like, hey, church family, I'm on a beach in, Panama City, but I'm really excited today to have blah, 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 that they're there. Because again, it's just one of those times that you can be like, and if you're new at the church today, sorry, I didn't get a chance. I'll be there next week. Would love the opportunity to meet, because again, this is all getting tied back to your kind of, the face of it. So any final thoughts, Chris, just of things that church planners should consider in those first couple years as far as who to bring in or who not to bring in?
Yeah, I think you're fighting for clarity. And one of the things that is so, so important in the early days of the church is you don't have all the bells and whistles, right? Like you don't have maybe the most like kick butt youth program, and kids ministry is good, but you got some areas to grow in. The number one reason why people come back to the church is not worship, is not kids. It's the teaching and preaching at the church. Like it's, statistically proven 80 to 90% of the second time guest comes back because of the teaching and preaching. And so that's why I think if I could tell you, it can't suck. All right. And so like, you've got to be thinking, you need a Sunday off. You need 2 Sundays off a year, maybe, but you've got to be thinking. And this is why it's really important to take your time to make sure that you're healthy as you go into the launch, because you're about to do a marathon. And when you hit the green light on planting the church, you're pregnant every week. Like Sunday's coming, you got 6 days to get ready. And I think it's really important that you understand, one of the things that we've seen in successful churches is they've got a key point lead pastor that's speaking the majority of the load, the overwhelming majority of the load, the first 3 years of the church.
Yeah. Well, that's great stuff. And just want to thank everyone for joining us today. And remember, if you have a question, you can go to churchplantersask.com. There's a little form that you can fill out. Drop us a question that you have or some challenges that you're working through. And until next time, keep asking those questions.